Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. I'm Roberta Solis, the Judicial Integrity Team Leader at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which is the Secretariat of the Global Judicial Integrity Network, a platform of judges and for judges to support in strengthening judicial integrity worldwide. It is our pleasure to welcome you today after a short recess in our series of webinars. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to our next virtual meeting organized by the network on the priority topics identified by the participants and that constitute new challenges for judges and jurisdictions across regions. This time, we are meeting on the occasion of the 10th session of the Conference of the States Parties to the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, and it's a very timely discussion linked to the topics of this convention. With the initiative of the webinars, we aim to continue to broaden the opportunities within the network for networking and knowledge exchange, in particular during this time of the pandemic in which in-person sessions cannot be organized. Before introducing our panel of experts of today, I would like to give the floor to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers, Mr. Diego Garcia-Sayan, also a member of our advisory board at the Global Judicial Integrity Network, for some welcome remarks as the co-organizer of this webinar. Diego, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberta. Good day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever for everybody here. And thank you for the opportunity to promote and organize this webinar, Roberta, to deal with this very complex matter that has to do with the threat of corruption and, from my view, the crucial role of judicial independence. This year, we are commemorating the 35th anniversary of the basic principles on independence of justice adopted by the UN 35 years ago. After that, several things have happened in the world, but two relevant things that were part of the products of the UN House. No? First, the Convention Against Corruption adopted at the beginning of this century, and then the principles of integrity, the principles of Bangalore. No? So these three sets, that is what the UN counts now as its main instruments to prevent corruption and to fight worldwide corruption, are key and very important. And the three of them work efficiently if they use consistently the values, the concepts that are included in these instruments, which means, in summary, first, independent judges, so that they can really act forcefully when there are big threats coming from corruption. Second, international cooperation based in the guidelines and the relevant norms that are included in the UN Convention Against Corruption. And third, integrity of judges. This table that has three legs, let's say, it's absolutely crucial. And so at this moment, we have excellent possibilities, not only to have an independent judiciary to prevent corruption, but to coordinate between these instruments. So I would say that the UN may have a key role to promote this, and even, and with this I finish, all what is called now in the pandemic, the new threats coming from the pandemic, among others, what are called COVID billionaires. COVID billionaires can be prevented with transparency, with integrity, but in any case, an independent judiciary and the instruments and the relevant norms of the convention are absolutely crucial, so to counteract against this new phenomenon that is today invading some areas of the world. Thank you, Roberta, for promoting this conversation today, and thank you for all the participants that are helping us with their time and with their experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diego. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you. As you usually say, this partnership, UN Vienna, UN Geneva, is becoming really productive, and I think really a benefit to judges worldwide. So it's a pleasure to continue to work with you. Continuing with the opening of our webinar, we'll now hear some welcome remarks from Mr. Marco Teixeira, the Global Coordinator for the Global Program for the Implementation of the Doha Declaration at UNODC.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, dear participants joining us today from all over the world, it is my pleasure to greet you all in this virtual event organized by the Global Judicial Integrity Network on the occasion of the 10th session of the Conference of Parties of the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime. To begin with, I would like to express our gratitude to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on independence of judges and lawyers, Mr. Diego Garcia-Sayan, who is here with us today co-organizing this event. Our thanks also to the invaluable panelists, Honorable Judge Mina Sugrati and Honorable Judge Virginia Kendall, who, through their careers and professional careers, demonstrated each and every day their strong commitment to strengthen integrity in the judiciary. I would also like to thank the State of Qatar, whose generous contribution and support has made available our global program for the implementation of the declaration to be operative and continue our activities all over the world. As you may know, this virtual event is the continuation of our series of webinars. Includes priority and emerging topics on judicial integrity, such as today's event on the challenges from organized crime and corruption on the integrity and independence of the judiciary. The challenges posed by organized crime to judges has increased over the years. This is not only with the respect of judicial independence and integrity, but also with respect to the security and physical integrity of judges in many jurisdictions all over the world. Judges should have the conditions necessary to exercise their judicial function independently and impartially without them or their relatives being threatened or coerced by organized crime. Given that states hold a responsibility to ensure security and physical protection of judges from any kind of threats to guarantee the overall rule of law. With this in mind, we are hosting this virtual event to discuss the challenges faced by the judiciaries and fulfilling the crucial role assigned to them by the United Nations Convention Against Corruption and the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime in adjudicating cases concerning these two areas. This event is also designed to share with you some of the specific resources offered by the Global Judicial Integrity Network to improve training on judicial integrity with the aim of preventing and combating corruption linked to organized crime. The great involvement in this event reflects the strong support of the participants to the network activities, as well as how timely this topic is for so many judiciaries around the world to also empower their commitment to judicial integrity, independence, and the security of judges. I wish you all a fruitful discussion during this event, and I thank you for sharing your time with us today. Have a very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Many thanks to Marco, who unfortunately could not be with us here at this webinar, but sent his message so we could all benefit from it. Thank you so much again, Diego and Marco, for your support, as usual, for the activities of the network. So in today's webinar, we will explore the topic of challenges from organized crime and corruption on the integrity and independence of the judiciary. The issue of judicial corruption and other threats posed by organized crime is a problem that is gaining importance nowadays. It challenges the independence, integrity, and impartiality of the judiciary in various ways, as we'll be discussing today. Given the relevance of this challenge, the Global Judicial Integrity Network has identified as a priority for its 2020-2021 work plan the need to support judiciaries in addressing challenges and trends, such as exploring the links and reinforcing the bonds between the concepts of judicial integrity and issues such as corruption, human rights, and transnational organized crime. This event aims to go one step forward and not only discuss the challenges that organized crime and corruption pose to judicial integrity, but also the good practices that can be implemented in this regard, including international cooperation, the legal framework, and obligations from the United Nations Basic Principles on the Independence of the Judiciary and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, as well as the specific resources offered by the Global Judicial Integrity Network, in particular to improve training in the principle of judicial integrity and independence. This topic is of great relevance, and therefore it's our pleasure to present the excellent members of today's panel, who with their extensive experience and knowledge will guide us through this topic. We have today with us Diego Garcia-Sayan, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers and member of the Advisory Board of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. Judge Virginia Kendall of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois and delegate to the International Judicial Relations Committee. And Judge Mina Sugrati, President of the Administrative Tribunal of Casablanca, Morocco, President of the Union of Moroccan Women Judges, and Secretary and Treasurer of the International Association of Women Judges. Dear panelists, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. I kindly ask our panelists to turn off their cameras when I call them to speak. We also kindly ask all participants to please turn off your camera, please turn off your microphone, so we can ensure the good quality of the audio for all of the participants. Thank you so much in advance for respecting the rules of the webinar and ensuring a good event for all of us. So we'll start now the discussion by asking a specific question to each of the panelists, then ask a common question to all three of them to encourage the discussion, and we'll finally then open the debate for the questions from the audience through the webinar chat function. So for the first round of questions, we'll start with Diego Garcia-Sayan. Diego, in your capacity as the UN Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers, you have emphasized in several of your reports the close link between corruption and organized crime. Could you give us more details and examples of how organized crime is currently threatening the independence and impartiality of the judiciary and judges, and why it is important to understand the linkages between independence, integrity, corruption, and organized crime? And second, how do you think that the applicable international legal framework, the UN Basic Principles, the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, and the UN Convention Against Corruption can serve to combat this threat and promote judicial integrity? Diego, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberta, and thank you for all the participants in this panel. Of course, there is a close linkage between independence of justice and the threat against independence that may come from organized corruption and organized crime. And these two big threats are actually quite connected to the fulfillment of human rights. First, because big corruption obviously deprives the world and societies of huge amount of resources that could serve for improved health, education, roads, and everything. Second, because the way through which these increasingly strong organized networks of crime and corruption are linked to political power, so to survive and to prevent investigations and sanctions, they need to act against a judicial independence. So at this stage, the protecting independence of judges and lawyers is not only a question that has to do mainly with human rights only in general terms, but has to do with how to prevent corruption and how to act forcefully against corruption, for which you need independent judges, because independent judges and independent prosecutors. Not only because that's the only way in which they can confront these networks that are usually connected to components of the political power, but because for the efficient implementation of the UN Convention Against Corruption, and especially in the key aspect of international cooperation, you need an independent judicial system, because that's the only way through which, when this cooperation is promoted, the other country would say, well, this guy is looking for these suspected persons because they have reasons, they have facts, and not because they are using justice as a political weapon against certain individuals. So that legitimacy, which in the traditional scope of the UN basic principle, has to do mainly for internal aspects, the connection between the society and the judicial system. Now it has to do with international cooperation. So an accountable judicial system is the absolutely key component to have an efficient implementation of international cooperation and to prevent this kind of impact of these networks, obviously, in structures of internal states. So, and to finalize with this, Roberta, when I presented my first report to the General Assembly in 2017, I made a statement that surprised to some people, in which I said the UN Convention Against Corruption must be seen as well as another treaty of human rights, because it prevents the societies to be deprived of huge resources, and it requires independent judiciary to be efficient, to be successfully implemented. So this occasion in which we have this possibility to combine different perspectives, and as Roberta has recalled, to combine the view and the approach coming from different areas of the UN, is absolutely crucial and should be forcefully promoted. Thank you again for this possibility to have this conversation in this year, which is, as I said, the 35th anniversary of basic principles that don't mention, they were written 35 years ago, they don't mention the threat of corruption against judicial independence. Let's not change the basic principle. Let's just consider that this is a key component that should be included in the interpretation of its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diego. And that's a very important point that you raise, that this instrument was adopted years ago, and the challenges, they keep also updating themselves. So the interpretation of the instruments must also accompany the times to continue to provide a good framework and resources for judges. That's definitely a very interesting point, and I hope we can come back to that during the Q&A. Thank you so much. Now we are going to move to Judge Virginia Kendall for her first question. Justice Kendall, over the years, organized crime has evolved, and the challenge it poses to judges and judicial integrity has become more pressing. Given your extensive experience, how do you think organized crime challenges judges and the delivery of justice today differently than in the past, including with regard to the personal safety of judges? Also, considering your experience as a judicial trainer, how can the judiciary provide training to judges to address this growing risk to judicial integrity presented by organized crime? Judge Kendall, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, everyone, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I think this question was beautifully framed in the opening by Diego, and I do think what's important for us to understand when we're talking about organized crime is that it's highly structured, that it is very efficient at getting its message out, that it uses levels of technology that are very sophisticated, and that the coercion and violence that comes with it is the thing that just prospers so much fear within the community. So when I look at the organized crime impact on the judiciary, I look at it in a twofold way. On the one track is a track where, through political influence, through the use of excessive amounts of cash, they are able to bribe and urge justice to do their will. And the justice is then losing his or her integrity. And then on the other path, you have where the structure and the coercion and the violence are such that through the authority of reputation, the judge is in fear of engaging in a sentence or enforcing a sentence that would be against the organized structure. So it's almost like two different paths with the way that it impacts the judiciary. The first path, the path that says that I'm connected to the political structure and have a significant amount of resources at my fingertips, and therefore I can go into a country where the judges are paid very little and offer a bribe in order for the case to come out their way. That first path is it's impacted differently than the other path, which is the path of the reputation of authority. In the first path, the way to really look towards solving some type of problem here is a very effective prosecutorial organization that is aware of public corruption laws, knows how to investigate them, and knows how to enforce them and seek that enforcement from the judge. The second path is the security angle, which was mentioned in the beginning by you, I believe, Roberta. The second path, which is that reputational authority may cause a judge to rule in a certain way. That is when we need security and we need the ability for judges to act independently without fear of retribution. And they are very unique and different paths, but they're equally critical to having an independent judiciary. So when it comes into line with the training of the judiciary on an international scope, one of the things that I have worked with for 20 some years now is to both train prosecutors about the laws that they have, because many don't realize that some of our international protocols, for example, include public corruption angles and public corruption law, money laundering and computer hacking and the distribution of child pornography and human trafficking and so many areas that we have available to us in order to just explain to prosecutors, don't forget this component of your investigation. Also, many investigators around the world just need to understand how challenging it is to actually investigate a public corruption case, because it generally involves some type of serendipitous taping, some type of court surveillance and recording. And this is not always where these investigative bodies are in their training. It also then turns to the judges to impose upon them an ethics component each and every time we gather together. And sometimes you have to understand that the sophisticated nature of an organized crime structure is such that they may work a bribe in a different way. It may be something more subtle than cash in the hand or a car or something like that, but it could be access to a university that their child is attempting to get into. And so these are things that in training judges each time about ethical decisions, recognizing when those forces are reaching in. The other side, or the other path that I mentioned, though, is when an organized crime structure is reaching in and is operating a basis of fear. It's fertilizing fear within the judge's decision making. They are sending strong messages, whether it be through threats or force or through coercion. And then that's when the judge is fearful. Now that is a different scenario. And that's when the protection of the judiciary is so critical. The ability for judges to be able to make these hard decisions and have any impact on organized crime has to be such that they can feel that they are capable of making a decision without having their family members harmed or themselves harmed because of their decision. Some of the things that we've done in order to help judges in this respect is to move training sessions away from places where this authority of reputation exists. So, for example, during the Malaysian bombings, we moved the Malaysian judges, and same with Sri Lanka, over to Bangkok for a training session where no one would see them gathering to learn about terrorism trials or corruption trials, where we could then openly communicate with them and hide the fact that we were doing this type of training within their own communities. So those are two examples of how we've been attempting to eradicate this problem.
Thank you so much, Judge Kendall, for your responses and for also giving specific examples. In particular, the one about removing the judges from their regular location for the training, for their safety, and to make the training an activity that would not have so many eyes on it. That's a very interesting practice, and I'm sure a good example for everyone in the audience. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, Judge Kendall, but whenever you're speaking, also please feel free to turn on your camera. So there's no problem in that. So now we move to our third panelist, Judge Mina Sugrati of Morocco. Judge Sugrati, please feel free to turn on your camera and microphone. Judge Sugrati, Morocco's justice system has implemented several reforms to fight corruption. For example, new reporting mechanisms, a new law for the protection of witnesses, whistleblowers, victims, and experts, and the launch of a toll-free Ministry of Justice hotline. Could you tell us how this modernization of the justice system and these new measures have helped to fight judicial corruption, including corruption linked to organized crime? And how can these new measures and reforms also guarantee the security and safety of judges and other members of the judiciary and victims who may be affected by organized crime in your country? Judge Sugrati, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I say thank you for inviting me to this discussion. Yes, indeed, this modernization of the justice system is the fruit of Morocco's effort in fighting corruption, where the strong link between the judicial integrity and the corruption on the one hand, and the danger of corruption and its implications for development efforts and the volume of investments on the other hand, the Kingdom of Morocco launched the national dialogue on reforming the justice system that is concluded by the Charter for Reforming the Justice System. Then a national strategy for preventing and combating corruption was adopted. And to implement these measures, the recommendation was to create a direct line by the Presidency of Public Ministry and to promulgate new laws to protect witnesses, whistleblowers, victims, and experts. Because in the absence of legal protection for the witnesses or the victims, some perpetrators persisted in their tyranny and the rights of individuals or society were lost due to the lack of security protection and the growing obsession with revenge amongst some. The results achieved by Direct Line were very important. In 1 year and a half, 156 operations were recorded, arresting suspected in flagrante delicto. These cases were brought before the judiciary to take appropriate measures in their regard. By September 30, 2020, the Center for Reporting Corruption and Bribery received about 50,422 calls, an average of approximately 110 calls per day, taking in consideration the weekends. It must be noted that the Direct Line would not have achieved the desired results without the protection of witnesses and experts, as about 30 cases benefited from that, 2 of which benefited from security protection. Well, for the security of judges and the victims, for the victims, the witnesses or the reported victim, the public attorney or investigating judge, each within his jurisdiction, shall take protective measures to ensure the safety of the victim, his family members. A telephone number for the judicial police or security services, then he can call at any time to request protection. Physical protection for him, his family members by the public force. Also, it can change of place of residence and no disclosure of identity information. The victim can be seen by a specialist doctor and assigned with the necessary social care when necessary. If the aforementioned protection measures are insufficient, a justified decision may be taken to take any other measure that is considered an effective guarantee for the benefit of the person entitled to protection. Concerning the judges and other members of the judiciary, this special law doesn't cover judges' protection, but the judges enjoy the protection of the states according to the requirements of the current criminal law. They may be exposed to threats, attacks, insults, or slanders. This is all what I want to say, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Sugrati, for sharing with us the experience of Morocco. You also raised an important point that the law, the framework has protections for the victims, for their families, but for the judges, it falls short of full measures to support them. So that's a very interesting issue to discuss, and potentially something that our network can help judiciaries also address. Thank you so much. With this, we conclude the first round of questions to the panelists, and I kindly ask the participants to mute their microphones so we can all hear the panelists, please. We are going to move now to the second round of questions, and now we are going to ask one common question to the three participants of our panel, and each one will provide their answers, and then we'll move into the Q&A. This common question, the objective is to already start the debate amongst them and the audience. And we'll follow the same order for the answers. So first, we'll ask Diego Sayan to reply, then Judge Virginia Kendall, and then Judge Mina Sugrati. So the question that we would like to put forward to the three panelists now is that through your contributions, we have seen now that there is a growing challenge to judicial integrity and independence of justice. So what practical advice or good practices would you like to further share from your experience to overcome the challenges of organized crime and to better understand the interplay between organized crime and judicial corruption? And how do you think that the Global Judicial Integrity Network, through, for example, its training, peer support, or specialized services, how can the network assist judges and jurisdictions to overcome these challenges? So, like I mentioned, Diego, you're first. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberta. First, of course, judicial independence must be stressed strongly, which as a concept includes not only judges, but in processes that are usually connected to criminal investigations, the key role of prosecutors so that they can be politically neutral and independent from political power is absolutely essential. One of the elements that has been normally a threat against not only judges but prosecutors is procedural sanctions, by which if a judge is performing in a way that can eventually be undermining the role and weight of the people that take decisions in this sanction procedure, they are sanctioned because of their independent role. So that's a crucial aspect. The next report I am going to present to the General Assembly the day after tomorrow deals precisely not only with the need that sanction procedures against judges follow due process, follow all the guarantees, including, of course, public prosecutors, and as well that what can be called the hidden procedural sanctions by which a judge can be eventually, quote unquote, promoted, sending him or her to other place precisely in the middle of an investigation that has to do with an important case, the case of corruption. So in all this context, of course, the judge and the prosecutor can receive information from different sources. The media can play a role. Investigations that are promoted by NGOs or by the Congress can be absolutely useful, but be careful that they don't undermine judicial independence or they don't prevent the judge and the prosecutor to take their own decisions. Of course, all this has to do directly with the last part of the question made by Roberta, with integrity. The judicial system must be independent, must be accountable, not only because that's the only way through which the society may have the assurance that the decisions taken are proper, but at the same time is the only way through which international cooperation against corruption and against organized crime can play a decisive role.
Thank you so much, Diego. Now, Judge Kendall, for your response, the floor is yours.
I have so many lists of things that I would love for the network to embrace as far as the answers to this question. Let's think of some concrete things that we as judges can do. One thing is to understand victims' rights within our own courtrooms, because organized crime operates frequently by just chewing up and spitting out victims in, say, the human trafficking scenario, a credit card fraud scenario, scenarios where there's cyber crimes. They use the vulnerable individuals to do the kind of dirty work and low-end work. And so when a victim comes in, one way we can make sure that the cases before us are prosecuted is to make sure that the protections for the victim are put into place. So that's one concrete way that we as judges can help these organized crime cases go forward successfully. Another way, of course, to protect us all is that we learn our own ethics and we understand when those that are not so intuitive are coming into attack or being attacked, excuse me. So I think training where we use concrete examples is so critical for us, and regular training where we understand, for example, the impact of new technology being used by organized crime. I also believe that when we have a judge that's harmed, when we have a judge who's killed, that we as the network making a statement about the need to protect and ensure the integrity of the justices on a global level is so imperative. We've had such sad news in our country this year, not from an organized crime hit, but rather from a litigant who was very disturbed and very upset with the judge's ruling. And he went to her house, killed her only child, her son, and seriously wounded her husband. And just the same month, a federal judge in Mexico was killed with links to organized crime there. And having a worldwide statement from us, from all of us, saying that if you want to be able to continue to address your ills and your harms in a safe courtroom where a judge will listen to you and give access to all genders and races and be calm and objective and give you a ruling, we must must protect that judge in her setting so that she may continue doing that difficult work. And I'm going to stop there since you can't see me. I will tell you that I'm done with the answer, Roberta.
No, thank you so much, Virginia. And don't worry at all about the camera. We've all ourselves experienced this at one moment or another during all of these virtual meetings. But thank you for raising the very important point of the security of judges in every type of case. What happened to the judge in the US, her family, it's truly appalling. It was not done by organized crime, but it shows that measures need to be in place regardless of the type of case that the judges are ruling, so the judges feel safe all the time to carry on their functions. And this is something that is part of our work at the moment on judicial immunities, which in their role in safeguarding integrity and independence, because one of the elements of this, as also Diego mentioned, the need for the due process when judges are being investigated, but also the need to provide security, safety for the judges. So now we move to Judge Mina Sugrati for her response to the second question. Mina, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Indeed, you know that judicial corruption is wide. It affects all countries around the globe. And to combat this corruption and strengthen the integrity of justice system is crucial to take many measures in the framework of transparency and good governance. I mean, some measures such as to link responsibility and accountability. Other measures that judges should declare their assets. Developing the legal system to combat corruption. In Morocco, for instance, Morocco has worked to complete the building and development of the legal arsenal with regard to combating corruption by harmonizing the national legislation with international conventions, especially the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. I suggest also continuous training for judges about ethics and integrity, which is very important. Concerning the Global Judicial Integrity Network, it's very important. It enables judges to change experiences, to learn from each other. Because change does not come only from inside, but also from outside. Therefore, the cooperation between judges of the world and international organizations will contribute to combat corruption and restore integrity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Sugrati, for these points. And it's very well pointed out the need also to harmonize national frameworks with the international instruments. Otherwise, there isn't much of a good use for all of these available tools internationally. Thank you so much. And many thanks to the three of you for all of the suggestions for the work of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. They are also well noted, and I really hope that we can all work together in these suggestions as well. So we've concluded now the panel questions to the panelists. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and experiences with us and the audience of the network. Through your experiences, we can definitely all draw very good lessons to tackle corruption in the judicial system, in particular that connected to organized crime. But before moving on to the question and answer with the audience, I would like to first give the floor to Mr. Eduardo Ezequiel Casal, the acting national prosecutor of Argentina and representative of the Ibero-American Association of Public Prosecutors, whose professional experience is also very much in line with the theme of our webinar today. Prosecutor Casal, I invite you to open your microphone and share your experience on how to promote cooperation at the international level to combat transnational organized crime and judicial corruption, especially from an Ibero-American perspective. I think we've heard from a lot of the panelists also about the role of the prosecutors. It would be good to hear from you as well. So, Prosecutor Casal, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can see you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Ms. Roberta Solis and the team of UNODC Global Judicial Integrity Network, and as well to the Special Rapporteur of the Independence of Judges and Lawyers of the High Commissioner's Office on Human Rights, Mr. Diego Sayan, for coordinating this site event and inviting the IAMP to participate in it. As the acting Attorney General in Argentina, it's a great honor for me to attend this meeting on behalf of the Ibero-American Association of Public Prosecution Services, IAMP, as it is called by its initials in Spanish, to express the important value that the integrity and independence of prosecutors represents for the credibility of rule of law and for our societies in general. IAMP was launched in Brazil in 1954, and nowadays it joins the public prosecution offices of 22 Latin American, Caribbean, and European countries, such as Portugal, Spain, and recently incorporated Andorra. The autonomy, independence, and integrity of prosecutors is one of the core issues within IAMP's objectives and missions. In this regard, IAMP's actions are based on its own statutes, adopted in 2016, the 1990 UN guidelines on the role of prosecutors, adopted by the 8th United Nations Congress on the Prevention of Crime and Treatment of Offenders in La Habana, Cuba, and the Lisbon Joint Declaration signed also in 2016 by the Attorney General's members of the IAMP and the community of Portuguese-speaking states. All these instruments reflect and put these principles as one of the fundamental pillars of the performance of the public prosecutor's services in the region. To fulfill these principles, in its statutes, the IAMP established as one of its missions to urge and defend the autonomy and independence of the public prosecutor services within each state organizations, and to enforce its role in defense of legality and the general interests of society. As you may know, the UN guidelines contains a series of recommendations that encompass these principles, setting, for example, that states shall ensure the prosecutors are able to perform their professional functions without intimidation, hindrance, harassments, improper interference, or unjustified exposure to civil, criminal, or other liability. They also refer that disciplinary offenses of prosecutors shall be based on law or lawful regulations, that disciplinary proceedings shall be expedited fairly under appropriated procedures, and prosecutors shall have the right to a fair hearing. The decision shall be subject to independent review, and that disciplinary proceedings shall guarantee an objective evaluation and decision, and determined in accordance with the law and the Code of Professional Conduct. At last, among other relevant principles, the Lisbon Declaration says that public prosecution services autonomy from executive and legislative powers constitutes a guarantee to legal equality, courts independence, and justice system's credibility. That public prosecution services must fulfill its functions guided by a legality and objective criteria linked to public interests and not only under constitutional and legal principles. In this regard, committed to autonomy and independence of the public prosecutors' offices in any situation that could put these principles at risk, the IAMP issues declarations or statements providing support to the affected countries, aimed to raise awareness and reverse possible situations of conflict. But it is important to highlight that these statements fully respect the principles of sovereignty and non-interference in internal affairs. In this sense, IAMP recognizes that all international organizations, as well as their member countries, must be very cautious when conducting an external evaluation of the prosecutor's independence, since an appropriate and objective assessment requires a thorough legal, political, and social knowledge of domestic issues of each region and country. This must be carried out together with field work that allows making fair, reasoned, and equanimous conclusions. Otherwise, taking actions in a different way would imply incurring in the same vice of partiality that it is intended to avoid. That is why IAMP's pronouncements are usually based on general premises and not on criticisms of conjunctural situations that are intrinsically unknown. The promotion of integrity and independence of prosecutors from any other power is so important because it is necessary to count with adequate and strong institutions to fight against the most serious criminal offenses that harms countries and societies. In order to tackle transnational organized crimes, IAMP is aimed to strengthen cooperation, promote the setting of common strategies to face the more serious crimes and threats that strike our societies, especially referring to organized crime, facilitate links and communications with other prosecution offices to achieve these objectives of integrity and independence and autonomy and efficiency in our service. IAMP promotes cooperations and alliances with other governmental and non-governmental organizations, and especially with criminal police organizations. We foster, go along with, and support the process of transformation and consolidation of justice administration systems in accordance with the principles of the rule of law, and provides an environment for technical assistance, joint debate, and exchanges of good practices and knowledge, enhancing practitioners' capacity on the different issues that concern the members of public prosecution offices to improve their efficiency, and establish and strengthens international cooperation ties to make the exchange of information and gather evidence abroad more agile and efficient. Well, and to finish, I mentioned that we have work groups and networks in human and migrant trafficking, crime, drug trafficking, corruption, illegal mining, money laundering, and criminal economy. And
Thank you so much, Prosecutor Casal. I'm afraid we have to go into the question and answer. Thank you so much for this very insightful presentation. I'm sorry, but we have to move on to the questions by the participants. Our three panelists, we have some questions in the chat. So we'll start with one of the questions, that is, how do you deal with malicious attacks through social media on those judicial officers who are trying to combat corruption, some of these attacks can be traced back to criminals? So the question is to the three panelists. So whoever would like to respond, please feel free to turn on the camera. Diego, please go ahead.
It's a very important question, Roberta, because one usually thinks about the threats against independence coming from political power. We are now including the threat that may come from organized crime or organized networks of corruption. But in worldwide, this questioning of the impact of the media, of the social media, or the traditional press is a matter which is very difficult but very important to deal with, because the judges and prosecutors should prevent themselves to be influenced by this pressure that eventually social media can create. How to undermine that is very difficult, because it's an open media in most countries. But in any case, first to stick to what are the principles of rule of law, and that the judge or the prosecutor must guide himself or herself for what the rule of law establishes, and not because he or she may feel that he will be attacked by the social media if the decision doesn't correspond to what they are claiming. Second, I think that in any way, association of judges can play a relevant role in support of this independence, not necessarily in support of A or C decision, but the thing in which that decision must be taken by the judge or the prosecutor. And in any case, it wouldn't undermine at all freedom of expression that a case in which a person is just being investigated or prosecuted is treated as such, as a person being investigated or prosecuted, not as a person that has been already convicted when he or she has not been convicted yet. We have many, many examples in several countries in the world in which the decision, quote unquote, has been taken already by the media or by the press, and that is not acceptable, and that doesn't correspond to the respect of independence of human rights. So it is important, and I finish with this, that the individual judge, the individual prosecutor has, in a way, some sort of support or connection with a network of judges in which to defend himself or herself against this kind of pressure has to do, of course, Roberta, with the matter we are dealing with integrity. Integrity can be attacked not only bribing a person, but as well he generating a kind of social pressure in which he or she is oriented to take a decision not following what the law and the factual elements will allow him or her to take, but to other considerations that are obviously a threat against independence. It's a matter very difficult to deal with. Many people don't want to speak about this because they don't want to be criticized by that same social media. But I think at this stage it's absolutely essential that this fourth power should play a role for accountability of states, for transparency, but not for impeding or affecting judicial independence, Robert.
Thank you so much, Diego. I don't know if any of the other panelists would like to add to this question.
Yes, if I may, I'm so sorry you cannot see me still. Can you hear me though?
Now we can see you.
Oh, you can. Oh, well, nice
now
to
we can
see you all.
Good. But
I don't know why.
Before you start, we have another question also linked to social media on the chat that maybe you can combine the answers. So the other question is, to what extent, if at all, has the pervasiveness of social media contributed to increasing the reach and impact of organized crime? And should more be done to hold social media providers to higher levels of accountability? So please, the floor is yours.
Right. These are such challenging questions, and they are ones very much grappling with in the United States right now. We are extremely concerned about social media statements against the judiciary that increase in aggressiveness and seem to incite a certain level of violence, or certainly work to incite violence in certain types of people that hear the statements. And so we are trying to figure out the best way to work as a judiciary without becoming an advocate or a mouthpiece, because we should be silent in our work, in the sense that our work should be, it should speak for itself, our opinions, yet we feel the need to protect the judiciary. So a number of things that we are doing in the United States is we're working with our bar associations to make statements for us at times when we cannot make them ourselves, where we could not comment on a pending matter. If there are statements that are spinning around in social media denigrating a judge, a bar association may come out with an editorial on social media, statements on Twitter, to knock down that statement and make a broad statement about the need to protect the independence of the judiciary and not incite this type of reaction. So that's one way we're looking at it. As far as those who are making these statements, it's a wonderful question to ask, because I'm an old prosecutor. Well, no, in my old days, I was a prosecutor. And one of the things that you always have to look for when you have that statement on social media is, where does it cross the line? Where is it, like right here and protected, but then here that incites someone? And we are seeing more and more statements that incite people. And in my country, you can see that the tremendous problems we're having right now, in significant part because of statements over social media. And so I think that in the old way of looking at it, in our country, for example, we would always say you couldn't hold internet service providers accountable. And there's a change coming, because now people are recognizing the proximate link between the cause and the effect of that statement. And we are seeing more and more people demanding that that internet service providers and certain social media be held responsible for policing the content and for stopping it before it becomes that inflammatory and instigating statement.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. When I saw the social media questions, I knew that you would have a lot to add.
Right.
You have been one of our leading experts in the development of the network social media guidelines, and it's always a pleasure to hear you talk about all the challenges that it poses to judges' integrity, independence, impartiality, and as we can see here in this debate, also to their safety when it's linked to organized crime and corruption. So thank you so much. We have some more questions from the audience. Judge Sugrati, we also have one maybe from the Secretariat to link this discussion, I think also through the International Association of Women Judges on gender-related issues. Judicial corruption has a gender perspective in which, for example, there are crimes such as sextortion that disproportionately affect women more. At the same time, organized crime affects in different ways women and men. So sexual violence is maybe an additional layer of threats to women judges. So could you tell us more about the gender-related judicial integrity issues linked to organized crime and how to tackle them from the experience of the IAWJ and the Moroccan Association of Women Judges?
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about another kind of corruption, which is sexual corruption. There are many forms of corruption affect both women and men, but given the unequal gender relations in society, women are more exposed to corruption and its consequences. They are exposed to different forms of sexual abuses like harassment, rape, extortion, and others. But sextortion is different. It's a sexual corruption, where the currency is sex rather than money. It's the abuse of power to obtain a sexual favor. It involves a fundamental breach of the ethical standards to which those with entrusted power are generally held. In the justice system, harassment and extortion are common, but are less likely to be reported or prosecuted than financial corruption because society treats sex and money differently. The victim who accedes to a demand for a sexual bribe is likely to be viewed differently than a victim who accedes to a demand for a financial bribe. Sextortion in the judicial system is not addressed by anti-corruption efforts. And judges are subject to, when judges are subject to standards of the Code of Judicial Conduct, which are the Bangalore principles of independence, impartiality, integrity, etc. The independence of the judiciary does not require merely a clear separation between the executive, legislative, and judicial functions. It also requires that the judiciary as a whole and individual judges maintain the integrity of the profession. Therefore, a judge who engages in sextortion is abusing the power of judicial office for sexual favor, which is immoral and ends with impunity on the grounds that there is no crime and no punishment without law. The experience in Morocco that our association, which is Union of Moroccan Women Judges, has implemented a project about sextortion, either in administrative, public sector or judiciary sector. We have implemented to make this phenomenon known by people affected and to find the solution to this issue. In Morocco, the Supreme Council of Judicial Power, with the participation of the Judicial Association, is preparing the Code of Judicial Conduct, because we haven't a Code of Judicial Conduct now. We are preparing this Judicial Conduct. We hope that it covers extortion and harassment. Also, the penal law doesn't cover explicitly sextortion, but the article related to the bribery can include it. And thank you.
Thank you. No, that is very, very timely and important to remember that corruption can happen in many forms, and all of these forms are also at the disposal of organized crime when trying to intimidate, when trying to threaten judges. So it is very important that a holistic, comprehensive approach is taken to combating corruption within the judiciary. Thank you so much for bringing that aspect to our discussion. So I have now one question from the audience that is to all of the panelists. So whoever would like to respond, any of the panelists, please feel free to do it. So the question is, how best to ensure that anti-corruption authorities, whether prosecutors or anti-corruption commissions, if they have the ability to investigate and prosecute judges, do not themselves become tools for interferences with judicial independence by corrupt or politically motivated politicians or other public agents within the executive branch of government. So this is a question to all of the panelists. How to ensure that the mechanisms to prevent corruption don't work against the judges themselves. Diego, please go ahead.
Thank you, Roberta. It's a very important question, because obviously there could be threats against independence coming not only from political power. So I would say that one very important aspect here is transparency. Transparency, of course, following due process. That doesn't mean that everything should be absolutely open, but transparency and communication with society so that people are properly informed of what is going on, what kind of investigations are being undertaken. That's very, very important. But in the broad scenario, what is the main guarantee so to sustain this independence in the investigations and in the criminal process is to have an appropriate process of appointment inside the judiciary and of course in the public ministry, in the prosecution service, and an appropriate system of promotion, which are the professional qualities, the only component that is being used, and of course, very aware of what can be called informal process of sanctions. This is a matter that I will include in my report to be presented in the General Assembly in a couple of days, through which a person that eventually is not being investigated internally by the system, but eventually, quote unquote, promoted with a transference, for instance, to other parts in the country, so that he or she will no longer be in position to follow up a case in which he or she is involved as a prosecutor or as a judge. I would say public information, transparency, and appropriate mechanisms of promotion and of appointment as a crucial components, not that don't work 100% as a permanent guarantee, that are absolutely crucial. So to guarantee that investigations are being properly done, in which nobody is being sent to other place in the country or to other unit in the system connected to a case in which he or she is involved.
Thank you so much, Diego. Virginia, I think you also wanted to answer this question.
Yes, thank you. But Diego did such a great job. I'll just say a few comments. He absolutely is correct that the internal structure, I think, is so critical for being able to sanction. The question really is, how do you police the police, right? How do you prosecute the prosecutors? And so there has to be an internal affairs type mechanism where the public can make a complaint, and that complaint can be referred to a body that is going to investigate it. And I totally agree with Diego that during that time, that person should be off whatever case he's working on or she's working on, because we need to have that internal affairs operation play out. And if we don't have that, we can't preserve the integrity of them. So I can't say much more than he said. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you both addressed it very well. It has to be a comprehensive framework, but also a framework for the judiciary, for the prosecutors, who should not be immune to all these anti-corruption measures. And I could not agree more with Diego on the issue of transparency, of the need for the strong appointment procedures, for what you all mentioned in terms of internal frameworks for those institutions as well. And I hope again that our work on judicial immunities can be an additional asset for judges worldwide when addressing these issues. We'll soon be finalizing and publishing that work, which will be an additional resource under the network, along with our social media guidelines for judges, our paper on gender-related judicial integrity issues, the guide on how to develop, implement codes of judicial conduct, and our package of judicial ethics training tools. So I'm afraid we are reaching the end of our webinar, of our time, but we're definitely not reaching the end of this very important discussion. about the effects of corruption and transnational organized crime on judicial independence and judicial integrity. The network will continue to address these issues in its work, and we count on the participation of all of you in these endeavors. So now, before we finalize our webinar, I would like to ask our panelists if they would like to say any final remarks. Please feel free to turn on your camera for your final remarks. Please, Diego, go ahead.
Yes, Roberta, I think that one crucial aspect in all this process, of course, the public is to be aware, international organizations as the UN, as I will make in a couple of days in the General Assembly, be as well informed and aware. But I think that it is crucial in all this process to strengthen and improve the networks of judges and of prosecutors, because that gives an idea to share experiences, to strengthen the values of independence, which are absolutely crucial and which has not to do at all with politics. It's an essential component of international law, an essential component of rule of law. And I think that this association of judges should strengthen themselves. They should be, of course, independent from political power, and as well among public prosecutors. What is being done in the World Association of Prosecutors, the Ibero-American Association of Prosecutors, one of the leaders we have heard today, is, of course, are important, very important steps. That doesn't undermine the role of the UN and all of that, but that gives a continuous and day-to-day connection with what is the activity of each judge, of each prosecutor, which is absolutely crucial and essential. And thank you for the participation in the debate of today. Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diego. Judge Kendall, Judge Sugrati, would you like to say any final words?
Yes, I would, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Well, I'm so grateful for this opportunity that we continue to have, especially during times of this pandemic. I do think that constantly gathering and educating each other about these issues so that we can share the best practices is so critical to solving these problems. And having this opportunity to do so is so critical to making our work transparent to others. And each time I gather, I say, oh, that was an interesting idea that they had. And then I start bringing it back to my country. And so to me, one of the most critical things about the public corruption, organized crime angle to the judiciary is that we, on the one hand, give each other support for doing what is a really difficult job to do during these times, and then also making sure that we hold ourselves to that same level of integrity, impartiality, and that we're transparent in our presentations. And that, I think, brings us together on a global level of saying that this is how we want to continue the world to look at the judiciary. So thank you again for hosting this, Roberta.
Thank you. Judge Sugrati?
Yes, I want to say that I add my voice to Diego concerning the judiciary associations. There is very important that because when there is an association, it's very good to overcome issues and to strengthen the integrity. And thank you for this discussion, very interesting discussion, because I have learned many things, important things from the panelists. I thank them for these ideas and sharing their experiences. Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you very much, Judge Sugrati. Mina, as usual, a pleasure to collaborate with you. And the point made about judicial associations and networking of professional networks is a very, very important one. As you all know, The Global Judicial Integrity Network also works to strengthen those processes. The judicial associations are one of our key partners in this network, and we do hope that we can find ways in the network to continue to support them in their mission of strengthening integrity and supporting judges worldwide. So thank you so much to the three of you, to our great panelists, to Diego Garcia-Sayan, the Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers, Judge Virginia Kendall of the United States, Judge Mina Sugrati of Morocco. Thanks for being with us today and to share with the network's participants all of your interesting experiences and good judicial practices, in particular on how to prevent and combat judicial corruption linked to organized crime. Many thanks to all of you in the audience who joined us today in this virtual event of the Global Judicial Integrity Network. And please stay tuned for the next webinars of the network. Don't forget to visit our website to learn more about our work on this topic and many other related to judicial integrity. We'll soon be in touch with new virtual events of the Global Judicial Integrity Network, including a very interesting discussion as well on how to train judges during a pandemic. So I hope you all join us again on that opportunity. And we'll continue to work to provide you interesting opportunities to collaborate together as part of the network and make this really a network of judges and for judges. So thank you all again for joining us for another webinar, and see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.